Going on, everybody? What is going on? The catch. Fam, I hope you guys are doing phenomenal tonight. Hope everyone's having a fantastic Tuesday. Hope you guys are ready for week 10 of the fantasy football season because, well, whether you're ready or not, it's here, ladies and gentlemen. We are flying through this fantasy season. We got another big week here in week 10. So, you guys know what we need to do. We need to run through some live fantasy Q&A. Anything that you guys need, starts, sits, ads, drops. What's the waiver wire looking like for you guys? Trade questions. We have so much time left to make trades. For most leagues, week 12 going to be that cutoff. Depends on your league, but only so much time to spice up those rosters, get some trades out. And speaking of trades, we did have a couple of trades at the NFL trade deadline today that we'll go over, but ultimately nothing crazy impactful from a fantasy perspective. But we'll still go over the trades that happened in the NFL today. And we'll sit back, have some fun, talk some fantasy football like we always do here on the channel. So start sits at running backs and wide receivers are live for you guys. Must start defenses, streams are live for you guys. And our early waiver wire video is live for you guys as well. So we will have start sits at quarterbacks and tight ends dropping very, very early or very, very late, however you guys want to look at it, tonight or tomorrow morning. And then we'll hop into Pete will have his kicker rankings coming out, and we'll hop into our end of the week schedule with must start players, buy low targets, sneaky starts, last minute waiver additions, and a early morning video on Sunday for you guys. So gonna be another lock and loaded week here on the channel. And for now, let's hop into your guys' questions. This is a tough week to navigate. Fantasy playoffs. I mean, they're just a few weeks away. We got about a little bit over a month here, guys. So I cannot believe how fast this season is flying by. But nonetheless, it is flying by. All right, Zach Moss is headed to IR with a neck injury. So Chase Brown, that monster game this past week. And I mean, now we have Khalil Herbert traded from the Bears to the Bengals. I still think this is Chase Brown's backfield easily. I know like some people are like very excited about Chase Brown and then not as excited after the trade. And I'm like, man, like Khalil Herbert, fine. Like they need depth here. But you look at the past couple weeks, I'm actually going to get this pulled up for you guys. You look at the past couple weeks, like Zach Moss has been getting touches still. Let me get this. Here, we'll just throw up a mock draft. Whoa. Where'd I go? So, we look at the past couple weeks, and Zach Moss is still getting touches in this backfield. Hold on. I spelled Zach Moss wrong. I spelled it with an H. So, I mean, nothing crazy. Obviously, he missed week 9, but 5 touches, 6 touches, 6 touches, 9 touches. And in those games, Chase Brown still getting way more touches and dominating that backfield. Last week was just, he was the only running back to touch the football. But outside of that, so I think Khalil Herbert's going to come in here and get touches, but it's not going to be like to the point where Chase Brown can't have this super high volume and upside and, double-digit games that we were seeing in the past couple weeks, excluding week 9, where it was just Chase Brown. So, yeah, in terms of Khalil Herbert getting traded to the Bengals, they need depth. They need somebody to replace. They need an RB2 in case something does happen to Chase Brown, God forbid. So, we'll see. All right, so Mike Williams on the move from the Jets to the Steelers. And I think this one's actually kind of interesting because we look at the Steelers depth chart, right? And I really think Mike Williams is going to be like the wide receiver 4 on this team, because obviously we got Pickens as a wide receiver 1, but Calvin Austin, I mean, low volume, but has had, is getting some targets from Russell Wilson. I think he had at least one red zone target against the Jets, if I'm not mistaken. And Van Jefferson has been doing some stuff here too. A touchdown in week 7, 4 grabs this past, or in week 8. So I don't know. I mean, I certainly think it makes sense, because it's not like they have this true stud on this team outside of Pickens at the position. So it makes sense to add some depth here, but they're already, with Russ at quarterback, getting these two guys, Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson, involved. So I think it's a good move, don't get me wrong, but I don't really know how that volume is going to shake out with Mike Williams now in that bunch. So we shall see. All right, then the biggest trade of the day, Jonathan Mingo, I'm kidding, to the Cowboys. I mean, come on. Jerry Jones is all in, ladies and gentlemen. So how do we look at this one? I mean, Lamb's a little banged up. Dak is dead. This team, I just don't know. I mean, they obviously need some depth at the position, especially with CeeDee Lamb a little bit banged up. But a 4th rounder for Jonathan Mingo, I mean, come on, man. So, I wonder how this potentially impacts Jalen Tolbert or Gavontae Turpin. But for me, I think it still goes Lamb, Tolbert, Turpin, then Mingo. So this is certainly an interesting trade. I mean, it does make sense. They did need depth at the wide receiver position, but still, it just feels like a bad trade. I don't know. I mean, they do get a 7th rounder in return as well, but oh well, it's just a very Cowboys move. Okay, so that's basically it from a fantasy perspective. I know we had some defensive players traded around, Marshawn Lattimore going to my Commanders, and some of those, like that will impact now when teams play the Commanders. This secondary for the Commanders has moved up to 17th against the wide receiver position, if I'm not mistaken. I have it right in front of me. 16th against wide receivers, where like early in the season they were like bottom 5. So they've been progressing as a secondary, and now they add this big piece to this depth chart as well. I don't think I can pull them up, and I think if I type in a Washington player, I can pull them up. Yeah. So this is a good move for Washington. Then we got like Zadarius Smith going to the Lions. I think that's a good move too. But from a fantasy perspective, we're just kind of looking at some So all right, let's hop into it, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you guys need. Hit the like button, do all that stuff. Hit the like button, or I will cry on this live stream in front of everybody. So we don't want that. We don't. So, okay, let's get into it, guys. All right, let's get rolling. Ghost Hunter, what's up? How are you? Bryce, what's up? How are you? Commanders fan is offering me Lamar for a JD5. I'm just nervous. Week 16 and Steelers. We suck versus the Steelers. Sure. Fair. It's kind of hard to like sit back and call these, playoff games and everything. Yeah, I mean they're gonna have the Giants, the Steelers, the Texans. It's fair, but maybe wait till after week 11. I mean, that's the road game against Pittsburgh. Maybe see how that game looks. I just don't want to move off Lamar right now. I mean, Jaden Daniels about as fair of an offer as you could get. But I mean, Jaden Daniels plays Philly. I mean, Philly's defense also just drastically improving right now. So, and he plays Philly in week 11. So he plays Pittsburgh next week. I mean, that might even be a good eye test for a similar style of quarterback against Pittsburgh. So maybe I would wait. Till, well, I don't know. When's your trade deadline? Is it after, at the end of week 12 or the beginning? I try and wait. That'd be my advice. And generally speaking, if it was me, I would just hold Lamar. Your boy, starting Darnold, H-Aid, Chase Brown, Tyreek, Adams, McBride, Chuba, benches Coleman, Dobbs, Dunze, Hawkinson, Mason, Dowdle. 4 and 5. Should I trade Hill for Smith and Dell? I would do that trade. Yeah. I would take the depth. at this point in the season, I mean, I still think we can get that ceiling out of Tyreek Hill at some point, but like, come on, it's just been, I mean, come on. He doesn't have like this out of this world schedule. I mean, there's good matchups in here, New England, Houston, Cleveland. These are good matchups. Don't get me wrong, but like, I would take the depth. I just would. I kind of play for depth. I'm also a big Devonta Smith guy. And if I'm not mistaken, he's got a pretty decent schedule. I mean, Dallas, Washington, the Rams, Baltimore, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Washington, we shall see. Dallas, good. I mean, yeah, I would just take the depth here. I mean, your wide receivers, I mean, your team's pretty good. I do think it would benefit from some nice wide receiver depth. I also think you could roll the rest of the season with Tyreek Hill, but yeah, I mean, I'm okay with this trade. Eagles defense, what's up, Dom? Or Chiefs defense? Would you drop Younghoe Koo for Boswell? I think I would. I mean, Koo's probably fine, but Boswell going into this past week was the kicker 2, and he's survived. He is still the kicker 2. He's been great. He's been great. I think, I mean, he's a kicker 2. Yeah, I would want him over anybody other than, who's the kicker 1? Is it I think it's Washington's kicker? Is it? Yeah. Yeah. So those are like the top 2 kickers I would want right now. In terms of the defenses, I'd probably go with Philly. I love their matchup against Dallas this week. Cooper Rush, not, I mean, he's no Will Levis or anything, but CD's banged up, Dak's banged up. This team just feels like, I don't know what we're going to get out of Dallas this week. I mean, maybe Jonathan Mingo pops off for 100 receiving yards or something, but I just don't have a whole lot of faith in them. They were like the top team I talked about in the defensive video for the week. So Kansas City, I keep telling you guys this. This is not a team we start in fantasy. They're a great defense in real life. They are fantastic in real life. They kind of struggled this past week in the rain, but they're not a good fantasy defense. They're just not. They're not. Okay. I mean, look at the numbers. They're all right there. They haven't done anything that makes me want to start them from a fantasy perspective. Like, sure, maybe week 12, you got him. You can start him against Carolina, but Bryce Young has been improving. They got some opportunity. Cleveland. That's about it. I don't know if I want to start them in any other matchup this year. So we can't stream against Denver. They're not that crappy. Sorry, just knocked my keyboard over. So yeah, they're just not a good fantasy defense. I've been saying it for weeks now. So, and yeah, I mean, like, Bo Nix is not that bad. Okay, he did throw a pick this past week, his first pick since week 6, but he has 2 interceptions since week 2. Little rookie bumps in the road right there. 2 interceptions since week 2. If we're gonna stream against a quarterback that had an interception this past week, Mahomes did not. But if that were the case, then we would have been streaming against Mahomes every week leading up to this past week. So, it's Bo Nix season, baby. Go start the Eagles. Bullseye, what's up? I'm gonna move Underdog stuff up there. Pick 2 running backs for week 10: Monty Brown, Tracy Harris, or Rashad White. Yeah, I mean, plenty of good starts here. I'm starting Chase Brown. I actually, I don't know. I mean, it's a short week. You guys know I hate Thursday night matchups. These are all good options. I told everybody last week I just don't bench David Montgomery, so I'll stick with Monty. But even then, he's got a tough matchup. So let's go to matchups here. A little bit easier for me to pull them up on my other screen here. So Rashad White's got the Niners. They come in 13th. Najee's got the Commanders. They come in 18th. Sorry, I knew there was one of these that I'm like, yeah, this is a must-start player this week, and that's Tyrone Tracy. I know I called him a must-start last week, and I was afraid I was going to get like death threats or something with the way he performed. 7.9 fantasy points. I mean, he wasn't bad. He's still efficient on the ground. 4.13 yards per carry, 66 total yards. He just didn't find the end zone, But against Carolina, They're giving up the most fantasy points to the running back position. They have been for weeks. Start Tyrone Tracy. And I mean, if it wasn't a short week, I'd probably still say Chase Brown. But not only is it a short week for Chase Brown, which I hate, they're playing Baltimore, who come in 7th against the running back position. So I think you could really start any of these other players. I'd probably go Tracy and Monty, but really everyone here is startable. And how about my guy Rachaad White, huh? He was in the Sneaky Starts video this past week. What other video did he make last week? He was in 2 videos. Oh, buy low. Everyone hates Rachaad White. I don't get it. I get this stretch was a little rough. I get it. But everybody hates Rachaad White. He's not that bad. Give him a break. Kels, what's up? Xavier Leggett, Ricky Pearsall, J-Mo. I'm starting Xavier Leggett. I can tell you guys that much. Great matchup. The Saints he's playing the Giants. I'm sorry. The Saints was this past week. Great matchup this past week. But the Giants also still a good matchup this week as they're giving up the 22nd most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. He's the wide receiver 1 on this team. Jonathan Mingo is gone, guys. Okay. But in all seriousness, Deontay Johnson's gone. Mingo's gone. I mean, the Panthers might need to trade for a wide receiver. Jalen Coker's fine, but I mean, for the person who called me crazy last week, the laughing face emoji for saying Jalen Coker was not a must-start player. Okay. Anyways, Xavier Leggett, I do think is the player due to volume that we want to start. And the nice thing was he showed some chemistry with Bryce Young. So it's not just Dalton there. So yeah, Xavier Leggett. And then, yeah, we got J-Mo back this week. We got my guy back from his suspension. I like Jameson Williams this week. I do. It is a great matchup. I talked a lot going into week 9 about Houston's secondary. Garrett Wilson was one of my must-start wide receivers of the week. We talked about Devontae Adams, and that showed, right? That showed. And this is a Sunday night primetime game. I think Jameson Williams could have a nice bounce-back game. I don't know if I want to start Ricky Pearsall this week. Talked about it in the wide receiver video. I get that this stat line looks nice right here, but Debo left this game early. Jawan Jennings wasn't playing. Jawan Jennings is practicing, expected to play this week. Debo is day-to-day, so I guess it kind of depends on the health of the other Niners wide receivers, but yeah, I prefer going Xavier and J-Mo this week. Never had it so good. PPR best tight end this week, Gesicki or Henry. Yeah, this is a tough one. So we did talk about Henry becoming a better option with Drake May at quarterback. I really went into last week initially thinking that Jacoby Brissett was seriously going to remain the starter, and that May was going to miss this past week. I was wrong on that. But when Drake May plays, so Drake May, the starters week 6 through 9, I mean, you look at these stat lines for Henry, 13, 17, 9.5, 12.6. So when Drake May is the starting quarterback, Hunter Henry plays much, much better than when Jacoby Brissett is the starting quarterback. So I think that Hunter Henry is kind of back in that a little bit of above the streaming area and more of like the start area. But I will say it's not a great matchup for Hunter Henry this week as the Bears allow the 3rd fewest fantasy points to opposing tight ends. So I would just bear that in mind. But Henry should see the volume as we only have so many receiving options and they're so volatile. Like now Kendrick Bourne's looking like the guy. And Pop Douglas, I don't know. I don't know who is the guy here. I don't know. Half of them are hurt. Polk, 13% of snaps last week. I guess it's still Pop and Kendrick the next guy. But yeah, I think Henry is kind of that security blanket here. So I do like Henry. That was a little bit long-winded. But We talked about Mike Gesicki last week, talked about him on Sunday morning's video as a very strong start. But the big thing with Gesicki and why we liked him is because we knew T. Higgins was not going to play this past week. So now we're kind of in this area of limbo. Like, is T. Higgins going to play this week or not? If T. Higgins does not play this week, then I definitely like Mike Gesicki. But overall, I think he's a solid start as the Ravens are giving up the most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. The most. They are also giving up the most fantasy points to wide receivers, the 30th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. They are good against the run, though, 7th fewest points. But I think I would break this down to matchup, and I would go Gesicki. But the thing that we really have to keep in mind is, like, you look at these games where T. Higgins was healthy. I think week 3, Gesicki was still okay. 5 targets, 4 catches, 8.7 yards. But you take that away, weeks 4 through 7, when Higgins was like back in the swing of things, where week 3 he just wasn't as involved. Gesicki was invisible. 5.1 or less points there, and 3 starts with 1.2 or less. So I do worry about that. But the matchup is just so good for Gesicki that I'd probably lean with the matchup here, and I go Gesicki. But I think the volume could end up being better for Henry. Now, if Higgins does not play, which we should know by Thursday, right, before the game, then you got to go Gesicki for sure. Chuba J-Mo Jennings, pick one. Yeah, I'm sticking with Chuba. The best thing that we saw from Chuba Hubbard this week is that he had this type of finish with Bryce Young at quarterback, because we've seen some of these lower ceiling starts, 1.4 points, 11.6, 9.1, when we've had Bryce Young at the quarterback position. Bryce Young did start in week 8, right? Yeah. Okay. So I can't even remember 2 weeks ago. So yeah, Chuba in a good spot this week. The Giants are good, not great, giving up the 15th most fantasy points to the running back position. So I would still continue to roll with Chuba. I think he's a very strong start. I like the other two, but I go Chuba. Would you consider dropping Dobbs for Jennings? I mean, it's pretty much a wash here for me. Which offense do you prefer? I think overall, I might prefer Jennings, but the only reason is because this inconsistency for all these Packers wide receivers is just like, I mean, it gets tough to deal with on a weekly basis, but we also don't quite know how consistent Jawan Jennings is going to be. I mean, it's not like he's been a model of consistency on the season thus far. In that week 3 game feels like a long time ago. So I do think that the Niners are going to start picking it up here and really get rolling. But then again, I don't know that I don't feel the same way about the Packers. It's just the bigger thing with the Packers is Jordan Love's health. I mean, he really should. I said this throughout the week. They're going to push Jordan Love to play because they're playing the Lions, and this is a divisional game at home. And he should have not played in this game ultimately. But it is what it is, right? So I don't know. I mean, they have 4 matchups out of the gate that I don't really like. At Chicago, that Chicago defense still good. I know they've been a little wishy-washy, but they're still good. San Fran at home, I mean, like, they're very, very wishy-washy, but I don't really like that. Miami's defense at home, also one of the best pass defenses in the NFL. Then at Detroit, I mean, that's got a ton of implications there. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, the game script can open up here. Packers are going to throw the football whenever they're behind for sure. And then this stretch right here is a little bit better. Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota in terms of matchup, but it's very hard to say here. I would still say overall the floor lies with Dobbs. The upside is with Jennings. Sutton on wire. Thoughts? Drop Deontay Johnson for Sutton. Yeah, I think especially right now, if you need points, I'd rather have Sutton for sure. He doesn't have a good matchup this week. I'll say that much. I mean, he's at Kansas City. Kansas City now giving up let's see. The 9th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So they might not be able to cover tight ends, but they can still cover wide receivers and stop and run for the most part. Yeah, I think I prefer Sutton, but we don't really like Deontay Johnson is a true wild card. Don't know what we're gonna get out of my boy Deontay. So the upside probably lies with Deontay Johnson. It's not particularly great matchups over the next 2 weeks. The Bengals are not that bad against opposing wide receivers. What are we going to get out of Deontay? I don't know. Bengals are 10th against the position, and Pittsburgh is 11th, right next to them. So, and then they got the Chargers, who are top 5 against the position. So, yeah, I don't know quite what we're going to get. And Philadelphia, for that matter, has moved up. And they are no longer one of these teams that we can just say, yeah, throw out. I mean, they've moved up to 15th, but don't forget, Philadelphia was a bottom 3 unit early in the season against wide receivers. So this is a tough stretch for the wide receiver position for Baltimore. So I might prefer Sutton if I need points now, but the upside probably still lies with Deontay because he is tied to the better offense. Chase Brown, Ramondre, Tracy Chuba, Rashad White, pick 2 to start. Yeah, I mean, I'm starting Tracy this week. We've gone over that. If a running back is playing the Panthers, I'm starting them. Then I find it very difficult to bench Chase Brown. But I also can understand not wanting to start Chase Brown because it's a short week and it's a bad matchup against the Ravens. Now, I do like Ramondre Stevenson this week. The Bears' run defense has not been very good. They've dropped back to 20th against the running back position. So I do like me some Ramondre this week, who has 22 or more fantasy points in his last 2 starts. And this was another promising stat line from this past week was Drake May at quarterback and Ramondre Stevenson being this involved in having a good game and also getting involved in the passing game. I mean, his rushing numbers weren't very good, but he did get involved in the passing game, which was nice to see. So if we're going by matchup, it's Tracy and Stevenson. But, man, you do have good options this week. Do have good options. I also don't want to, get too much exposure into the Sunday morning's game if possible. Just because, I get weird about Thursday night matchups and Sunday morning games, but that's just me. So I'd probably go Chase Brown on a short week. The volume. I mean, volume is king at the end of the day, and the volume for Chase Brown it's just there. I don't really care about Khalil Herbert going to this team, as we discussed at the beginning of the stream. So if you want to avoid the bad matchup in short week, go Stevenson and Tracy. If not, go Tracy and Stevenson. But I also really like Chuba, and I think White is a good start. So the good news is I don't think that you're starting a bad player, no matter what you do here. Kincaid or Otten? Man, I don't know that I'm benching Cade Otten. The Colts 27th against tight ends. That's fair. And San Fran is 10th. I don't think I'm benching Cade Otten. I don't. And remember, guys, I was saying to start Cade Otten before this whole thing, the Cade Otten hype popped off here. So I also have kind of been saying roll with Dalton Kincaid and take the punches. And he does have a good matchup, that's for sure. But yeah, I'm going Otten. If it's I'm sticking with Otten. The volume there is just redonkulous. And Evans won't be back till after the bye week is our assumption. Armando, what's up? Pick 2 to start. Cook, Hunt, Pollard. Who wins in a trade between Flowers for Downs? So let's start with the first part. I'll go Cook and Hunt off the top of my head. I really liked Pollard this past week, and I still like Pollard, but he gets the Chargers, giving up the second fewest fantasy points to the position. I mean, I got no beef with Tony Pollard, but I don't like that matchup. So I'll avoid Pollard out of this bunch. James Cook, I'm still going to roll with James Cook. I know he's coming off of a lower ceiling game. Colts are 17th against the position. Hunt gets the Broncos. They're 16th against the position. So, yeah, I'll go matchup here. I'll go Cook and Hunt. Flowers for downs. I mean, right now I want Flowers. Yeah. Yeah. And I've been pretty high on Flowers all season long. One of my strongest, like, buy low arguments on the season was going out and getting Zay Flowers after this stretch right here. And then after this game against Tampa Bay, especially because he was just hurt that game and nothing else. Like, there's literally no, that's the only reason. And then these two games, the only reason he had a bad game there was because he wasn't necessary. I mean, literally, Derrick Henry ran for, well, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in those two games ran for a ridiculous amount of yards, 151 to Henry, 199 to Henry, and then 87 and 54 for Lamar. So at Justice Hill, I think, and Justice Hill had 78 receiving yards in week 4 too, and 21 in week 3. So anyways, that's kind of besides the point. It's just me tooting my own horn. But yeah, Zay Flowers has been a monster this season. And really in week 1, Lamar missed him wide open at the end of the game. He should have had a touchdown in that game too. So it's got to be Zay Flowers. Like, the offense is better. We can trust the quarterback play. It's got to be Zay Flowers. The ceiling is higher. I still like Josh Downs, though. Barbara, pick up Wilson, Herbert, or May. Got love on bye. Honestly, I'd probably go with Russ. I think Drake May is startable. I think Herbert is startable too. They're both definitely streaming options. But I think I'll go with my guy Russ here. Going up against Washington. Let's break this down by matchup. Drake May gets the Bears, giving up the fewest fantasy points to the position. Russ gets Washington. They're giving up the 17th most. They're kind of right there in the middle. Herbert gets the Titans. They give up the 15th most, so they're also kind of right there in the middle. I think personally I will go Russ, but he could also go Herbert. Sydney says, I'm stacked on running backs, struggling this week on wide receivers. Have Jennings and Jameson on waivers. Who should I go for? So in the waiver wire video, these were the two guys that I said, if they're out there, pick them up, So I think you could put in a waiver for both would be the smart thing to do. I personally still want Jameson Williams here. If you end up with Jennings, I think that's fine. But I personally want Jameson Williams because going into week 7, where he had this goose egg, essentially, he was the wide receiver 15. He was not playing that bad whatsoever. He had this dud, in week 3. I mean, the volume wasn't fantastic outside of the first 2 weeks, but this offense is just getting it done in so many different ways. Just a more consistent offense, although I do think the Niners are going to get it going here, but I prefer J-Mo, but if you end up with Jennings, that's okay too. Howdy, would you trade Chase, Downs, and Bigsby for Nico and JT? I don't think I want to trade Jamar Chase. I just don't. I mean, I like Nico as much as the next guy, and honestly, while Chase is the wide receiver 1, if Nico was healthy the past couple weeks, he might be the wide receiver 1. So, I mean, I do think it's a relatively fair swap. I mean, Nico's still the wide receiver 15, and he's missed 4 games. So, I mean, if you want to go for it, I think it's okay. But you also have to factor in that Nico now has risk because he's coming off of injury. So, he might play this week. He might not play this week. We don't know. You're kind of looking at this as a swap between Chase and Nico, and then Downs and Bigsby for JT. So I do think in essence it's a fair trade, but I would prefer just to have Jamar Chase right now. And I mean, of course, it depends on the roster. Like, what does this do to your running back room? How bad are you at running back? Like, what does having JT do for you? It just kind of depends. But I think generally I prefer Chase. Gob, what's going on? Trading or thinking of trading Laporta, Deontay, Ramondre for either Ladd, Devonta, Mooney, or Neighbors. Is any of them a fair trade offer? I think you're gonna have to wait till Deontay is coming off of an actual game. I don't know that this would get pushed through right now. I don't know that this would get pushed through for you. Maybe for Mooney or Ladd. I don't think you'll get Neighbors or Devonta for this trade at this moment. The other two potentially, though. Might have to fire it up a little bit more. With my running backs being Mixon, Jacobs, and Connor, would you move one piece for Hopkins? And if so, who? Not Mixon. Not Mixon. I don't know that I'd move. I think you could get it done with Jacobs or even Connor. But yeah, Jacobs has been so consistent. Let's make that the poll question because we don't have a poll question. And we need one. All right. What running back would you trade for? D-Hop. And don't forget, guys, hit the like or else. So we got Jacobs. No way I'm trading Mixon. Connor. And Connor and Jacobs been quite good too. I mean, I think if you want D-Hop, and that's the thing, like you're buying D-Hop high, right? But yeah, I mean, Connor's the RB11, Jacobs the RB10, and Mixon's probably further back because of the injury span, but no, he's not. He's the RB8 with missing 3 games and half of a game in week 2. So, geez Louise. I mean, listen, Tampa Bay has really struggled against opposing wide receivers. Like, I still think DeAndre Hopkins is a flex play this week, and that's it. Going up against Denver, you know? He's not going to do this on a weekly basis. Denver giving up the 6th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. Buffalo giving up the fewest fantasy points. I think it's Carolina. Las Vegas hasn't been that bad against wide receivers. I think it's the Chargers, tough. I think it's Cleveland, Houston, Pittsburgh, tough, Denver, tough. So not really a super enticing schedule here. But to answer your question, I think you could trade any of those running backs for DeAndre Hopkins. Oh, Bryce, you're the one getting Lamar. Then I would do it. I would get Lamar. I get Lamar. Drop Andrews for Gesicki or Hill, or keep Andrews. I also have Ferguson. I would personally keep Andrews and Ferguson. You know, I think you're kind of chasing points here. I think the more consistent players, like all tight ends, are going to have these bumps in the roads. It's just how it is. But I think you got Andrews, you got Ferguson. You're good. Take the consistency. Don't chase last week's points. But Gesicki this week, if Higgins does not play, should have another big game. So if you want him, but you drop Andrews, you drop Ferguson, you're not getting them back. They're going to get picked up. And Taysom Hill, lots of injuries. It's a good matchup this week. It's not as good of a matchup as last week, but yeah, I mean, I've done the Taysom Hill train before. It's a bumpy ride. Armando, best defense to pick up from the wire: Giants, Lions, Falcons, Rams. I think the Lions are a good start this week. I think the Giants are a desperation stream. The Rams are very interesting. They have been a team that's gone over my head. This is part of my job, and I've missed them the past couple of weeks. They have 3 double-digit performances in their last 4 games. So I am now paying attention to them, but they did not make this past week's video. But I also don't really like them against Miami Tua's looked good in his return. I don't know. I don't know if I trust them just yet, but they have put together some nice games here. Then the Falcons are like, they don't really have a pass rush, but they're a good defense, but they're also not. I mean, they're giving up. They got one game under 20 points, and that was to Pittsburgh. Um, Giving up a lot of total yardage. They're not good against wide receivers. There's no reason to start Atlanta. I'd probably start the Lions if it were me. Chase was good, man. Will there be another live stream this week? So generally I'm live on Tuesdays and Saturdays. Those are really the only guaranteed days right now. Albert, good to see you. It's a gross one, but would you drop Pat Freiermuth for Taysom? If you need the points right now, yes. I mean, I don't really see any reason to start Pat Freiermuth. I have him as a sit in the video for the week. Spoiler alert. I mean, there's no upside here. They're starting to get Darnell Washington, just a teensy bit involved. Yeah, I just Pat Freiermuth does nothing for me. Commander's not great. 16th against tight ends, not bad. But Taysom Hill, I still think is a short-lived, inconsistent option. But I do like him this week. Atlanta has not been very good against tight ends. They are giving up the 19th most fantasy points to tight ends. So, jeez, excuse me. Yeah, I'd rather play Taysom Hill this week, but Freiermuth might be the safer option. I'd risk it for the biscuit, brother. I'd go get me some Taysom Hill. Get on that bumpy train. Happy PR, Hawk or Ingram. Well, we're going to be looking for a touchdown upside here. So Hawkinson gets the Jags. You know how I feel about this defense when it comes to tight ends, giving up the 29th most fantasy points to the position. And Evan Ingram, on the other hand, in that same matchup, will get the Vikings. They come in 13th against the position, so not bad, to say the least. So for a floor, go Ingram. For upside, give me Hawk. Is Bigsby now droppable? If I drop him, should I get Davis, Garando, Spears, Herbert, or keep Bigsby? I'd still keep Bigsby over these options. I'd still keep Bigsby over these options. I don't know that I keep ETN, but at the same time, you're looking at all you've got there are handcuffs. I mean, Ray Davis is one of my favorite handcuffs, but he is still just a handcuff. Okay. I mean, he's got the big catch this past week that turned into a touchdown, did nothing in week 8 as a reminder that he's just a handcuff. Garbage time touchdown in week 7. And then in week 6, James Cook didn't play. So don't get me wrong. He's a good handcuff because we know what he can do if James Cook doesn't play. And he has some standalone value, but ultimately he's a handcuff. So I would just keep Bigsby. But I can understand not wanting to have Bigsby. Start Andrews with likely injured or Ferguson with Rush at QB and Lamb injured. Yeah, that's a good question. So not a great matchup for Andrews on a short week as the Bengals are giving up the 10th fewest points to the position. Fergie, on the other hand, gets the Eagles giving up the 15th fewest. So, I mean, I think you're really still flipping a coin here. I think I stick with the better offense. I go Andrews, but it's close. Happy PR need a flex. Oh gosh, I swear I don't feel this tired. And a wide receiver, Higgins, if he's healthy, Sutton, Dowdle, Bigsby, or tight end. If you wouldn't choose to start at tight end of Ingram, Hawk. So, I would definitely start Higgins if he's healthy against the Ravens secondary. And I would probably just roll with Sutton. And Yeah, once again, a floor, you go Ingram, the upside, you go Hawk. If Higgins doesn't play, then I'm probably just going to go with Dowdle. Barbara, start the Vikings defense or the Eagles. I still prefer the Vikings. Talked about it going on last week. I mean, the Vikings are just a safe option, and told you guys don't give up on them just because of Week 8's performance. And I mean, they get Jacksonville. I got to go the Vikings, but I do like the Eagles a lot this week as well. But I still think the Vikings are the better overall defense. I know Tracy is a good matchup, but I also have possibly CMC coming back, Kyron and Swift, who I was planning on flexing. Would you put Tracy over any of those? I mean, yeah, you can't really go wrong here. I will say Christian McCaffrey has not really come up tonight, and we are expecting his return. But there's still risk with starting Christian McCaffrey this week. We don't quite know, what is the snap count going to look like? Is he going to jump right back into things? Jordan Mason's probably still going to be involved. It is a good matchup as the Bucks have given up the 24th most fantasy points to the position. So if you want to play it safe, you can just go Tracy, Kyron, and Swift. If you want to start McCaffrey, then it's very tough to choose who you don't start here. I'm still rolling with Swift. Swift was not bad last week just because he didn't score. He still had 14 fantasy points. So, and Swift has such a good matchup. Kyron has a fantastic matchup too. Honestly, like this might sound crazy, but I think I'd bench CMC. Because as good of a matchup he has, the other running backs involved here have better matchups. I mean, you literally have the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Panthers are all bottom 4 against running backs in fantasy football. So while the Bucks are still a very good matchup, the other matchups here are better. And I would go ahead and bank on saying we're going to see a snap count for Christian McCaffrey. So if you want to start CMC here, that's fine. Don't get me wrong. But I'd probably just go with the 3 guys that we know are going to see an extreme amount of volume. And just be happy that CMC is back for you. You've got a good backfield there. Good running back room. Chase, I have a 6-3 team, kind of stacked at receiver. Should I just ride it out with this team the whole way? Purdy, JT, Chuba, Gesicki, Wilson, Dell, Debo, Pickens, Stafford, Bucky, B-Rob, Jacoby, Tolbert, Mike Evans. Yeah. I mean, you have serviceable running backs here. B-Rob's been banged up. Bucky is just still startable. I know this past week wasn't good. JT, Chuba's kind of like Jonathan Brooks, but I think Chuba will be okay. I mean, yeah, if you got depth at wide receiver, take it, Why not? Seen so many injuries to the position so far this year. Barbas, start 3, 2 for the wide receiver spot, 1 for the flex. We got Chase, Pickens, Shakir, Amari, beat Tom. We're starting Chase, no doubt. We're starting Pickens, probably. I guess you're going to have Lattimore on him, but I don't know if that's 100% scaring me off. I do like Shakir this week. And I like Brian Thomas due to matchup. I know last week was tough for B-Tom, but yeah, I'm probably staying away from Amari Cooper in lieu of recent events, such as him bailing on us this past week. So I probably go Chase. I go Chase and B-Tom, but then it's close between Shakir and Pickens. Pickens probably better guaranteed volume. Shakir a better matchup. Jeremy, tough decision. An 8-man league. Happy PR. Too many running backs nobody wants to trade. I got C-Mac, Mason, Dobbins, Tracy, B-Rob, Kyron. I got to bring one I got to drop one to bring CMC off IR. Yeah, that's definitely tough, but I think the odd man out's gonna be Jordan Mason, but I get that he's tough to drop. Like, obviously if we see a another injury to CMC, then you've lost that handcuff. And plus, I do think that we're still going to see touches to Jordan Mason, maybe not a ton, but some right off the gate. So I think in an 8-man league, though, like you got to make choices like this. It's probably Mason. Your boy, thoughts on Chuba this week and Chase Brown rest of the season since Herbert is there. So yeah, I don't think that Chuba's going to be like doomed just because Jonathan Brooks is going to enter this backfield. If you guys remember in the offseason, I was really high on Chuba Hubbard, and I talked about this a lot. Like Jonathan Brooks is going to come into the mix at some point, and that doesn't necessarily mean that he's just going to aggressively take over this backfield right away, especially if Chuba's playing well. And Chuba has been playing well, right? So, I think Jonathan Brooks is going to be sprinkled in here this week, but not to the point where I'm worried about Chuba yet. And I mean, I don't know. What are the Panthers really going to be playing for after the bye week? I don't know. So we'll see how some of these game scripts start to unfold, but I would still guess that this is Chuba's backfield the way he has played on the season thus far. Outside of that, Chase Brown, I have no worries about. We talked about this at the beginning of the stream. Chase Brown, in no way whatsoever am I worried about Khalil Herbert. I mean, what has Herbert really done? A couple games last year. This is when Denver's run defense was awful. Arizona, Atlanta. I honestly don't remember at the top of my head where they ranked at the end of last season, but I mean, yeah, you look through the past couple years, it's very inconsistent here. So obviously he's had the flashes, but in that same regard, we went over this. Like Zach Moss was still getting touches these past couple weeks, and Chase Brown had double digits in almost all those games. So week 9, Zach Moss did not play, but yeah, I'm not worried about Chuba just yet. Until we see something, I'm not going to be worried. And I don't think there's any reason whatsoever to be worried about Chase Brown. I just don't think so. Tommy, what's up, bro? D-Hop brings home the win in my home league. Nice. Knocked out the first place. 6-2 team right in the mix at 4-5. Beautiful. 4 teams ahead of me at 5-4 and 2 at 6-3. Good place to be. We buy homes near you. In non-PPR, is Waddle droppable for Ferguson if I have McBride? Honestly, I think this is kind of the point in the season where you have to look at things and you have to kind of ask yourself, like, am I ever going to start Jalen Waddle, for example? Now, it also feels like the risk is there that if you drop Jalen Waddle, he's going to finally have a good game. Like, he's got a good matchup this week. He's got a good matchup against New England in week 12. Got a good matchup in week 15 against Houston. So I can understand not wanting to drop him. At the same time, though, if you have McBride, I mean, Ferguson's as good of a replacement as you're going to get. The fact that you can pick up Ferguson off the waiver wire and potentially stream him the week that you can't start McBride, that is as good as it gets, right? So, but ultimately, and I'm like pretty low on Waddle at this point. In the wide receiver video, I was like, I'm sitting Waddle. I don't want anything to do with Waddle. So it kind of depends on your roster. Like, who else do you have at wide receiver? If you're good moving on, then that's fine. But at the same time, if I want to drop Waddle, I prefer to drop him for a running back or wide receiver of value. But Ferguson is overall the more impactful player in fantasy. So Waddle has 66 points on the season. What am I doing? Ferguson, on the other hand, has 71.4. But Fergie's missed a game, and he's a tight end. So I thought that was going to be a better. I honestly, I didn't know, but I thought that was going to be a better comparison there. But yeah, I don't have a lot of. I'm not gonna. I'm not starting Waddle anytime soon. So it just depends. Tommy got 4 straight wins in both catch fam leagues. Nice. Should I worry about Mike Williams going to the Steelers if I have Pickens? No. Grab Eagles, Bears, Broncos, or Giants. I would grab the Eagles personally. Eagles, then Bears, then Giants, then Broncos. How do I feel about Juju, Noah Brown, Tolbert? I'm trying to decide who to stash. Currently have Juju and Tolbert. Yeah, I would prefer Juju and Tolbert over Noah Brown. I would just hold there. I think Noah Brown is a player that is rosterable. Was that a word? But not much past that. The sample size is very small. We've got more out of Tolbert and Juju. I think the potential is bigger for both of them on the year. Freezy Fantasy, hello. 10-man PPR, trade Chase, Brian Robinson, and Mooney for Lamb, Mixon, and Dell, 6 and 3. People are either telling me I'm either fleecing or getting fleeced. Yeah. Well, CD's banged up and Dak is down. Cooper Kupp is serviceable. It's close. I mean, Chase is clear cut the best player here. I mean, that's the thing though. Like, if you're going to trade the wide receiver 1 in fantasy, the running back 1 in fantasy, like you can't just, you got to be blown away by the offer. I'd rather have Mixon than B-Rob. I'd rather have Dell than Mooney. But Chase is still the most valuable part of this equation. So, I mean, you're 6 and 3. It kind of depends on the roster with this big of a move. But I think overall, in general, I prefer to keep Chase. Is Herbert worth the pickup? I mean, he's worth a pickup, but I don't know that he's going to be like any better than Zach Moss has been, for example, in these past couple weeks. So he's somebody that we can roster. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to expect like to be starting Khalil Herbert and get points unless Chase goes down. Yeah, I like Jawan Jennings. I think he should be rostered. We'll have to see how that volume shakes out there. Debo may or may not play this week, so I like Jennings. Tommy, home league, my wide receivers are Evans, Debo, D-Hop, Ladd, Leggett, Tillman. Could I potentially package 2 of these to get Nico? I mean, I think to get Nico, you're looking at a combination of Evans, Debo, D-Hop, or Ladd. And it might end up getting top heavy where Evans and Debo are. I mean, I don't know. I think Evans and D-Hop would probably get it done. But is it worth it? Then you'd have Nico, Debo, Ladd, Leggett, Tillman. I mean, yeah, I think you could get it done, but I would start light. Start with Tillman and Ladd. You might be able to get it done. Cindy, back to the JMO comment. I only have one person I can put in a waiver for. I'm not willing to drop anyone else, dropping Godwin. So, yeah, I get that. So, what I meant was put in your first waiver, drop Godwin for JMO, and then put in a second waiver, drop Godwin for Jennings. And then that way, if somebody else gets JMO, then you're still in line to get Jennings. Does that make sense? But yeah, I think, if you're only going to get one or the other, I prefer JMO and then Jennings, but it is close between the two. Hit the like button, and your team will go all in by trading for Jonathan Mingo. Cowboys are all in. I got Kupp, Evans, Debo, Waddle, and D-Hop. I start 3. Looking to package 2 to upgrade at wide receiver. Ideas. Got Brees and Kenneth with JT at flex 2. Um, so let's see. Most weeks are starting Cup, Evans, Depot. Lately, not so much. Um, it's just hard to really like who exactly are going to tier up for here. And if you have a winning record, I'd probably just keep these players as is. The problem is there's only so many healthy wide receivers. I don't know that you need to upgrade at running back. I can understand wanting to get a more consistent guy in at wide receiver, but the problem is I think you got to give up some depth here. And like you're not gonna get a Hill or well, you might get Hill, I'm sorry. You're not gonna get a JJ or Chase or Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown with these type of names, unless you trade away maybe Cup and Evans, but Evans' value's perceived lower right now. Um, I think you might be able to trade for Nico while he's hurt. I'd be targeting guys like Devonta Smith, Zay Flowers, Terry McLaurin. But even then, like you're gonna have to give up a pretty hefty price. So does the consistency outweigh uh the potential here for added depth would be my question. We buy homes. Which kicker goes off this week? Youngway Koo, Boswell, Boss, or Group A? I would stick with Boswell. I would just take the consistency. So kicker 2 on the season. I would stick with Boswell. Armando, you're very welcome. Thank you guys for hanging out tonight. Thank you guys for being here. Carson, would you trade Ladd for JT? Yeah, I think I would. I mean, of course, it depends on the roster overall. That's a good buy low, though. I mean, we got JT coming off a bad game, so and Ladd's not particularly coming off a great game, but I still think Jonathan Taylor's the more valuable player, especially with Josh Palmer and Quinn Johnson being involved. But it's a pretty fair swap at the end of the day. I think I'd rather have JT, but it's close. Might depend on the roster. Roberto, what's up? Would you trade Reed and Javante for Brees? I think that's a fair trade. Yeah, I think it's a pretty even trade. But I mean, I still personally, I might be holding out too much here, but I like Jaden Reed. Finally had another good-ish game here. The past 2 weeks have been tough. Before that, I still like Jaden Reed. I mean, I know this is kind of a warped ranking, but he is the wide receiver 3 on the season. It depends on the roster, but I think it's a fair trade. Barbara, pick up Wilson, Herbert, or Lawrence. I have Love, so I think we hit this one earlier. Oh no, this is different here. I might be crazy, but I think I like Russell Wilson the best. Now, I talk about this in the quarterback tight end video, which will come out early in the morning. I do think Trevor Lawrence is streamable this week, but Minnesota against quarterbacks has moved up to 11th, where going into last week, they were 31st against the quarterback position. So, you know, yeah, the nice thing is that the Jaguars defense is so bad that the Jaguars are constantly throwing the football. But even then, you look at the passing numbers last week for T-Law, they're not good. 16 to 31, 169 passing yards, 2 picks, no passing touchdowns. He ran for 2 touchdowns. So, you know, I want to like T-Law, but he also worries me. Then I do like Herbert, but once again, it's not a great matchup. His upside's not super high. 19-ish points is probably doable. So those guys are all pretty close. Broncos or Chiefs? The Broncos scaring me, man. They're at Kansas City. I'd probably just start Kansas City, but I don't think either are a high ceiling play this week. Purdy or Mahomes rest of the season? Probably Purdy. It's always really hard to trade a quarterback for a wide receiver. So, I mean, I expected a good game out of Mahomes this past week, a good matchup. I feel like I'd rather have Purdy, but both teams are banged up. Thank God we didn't see a serious injury to Mahomes, but yeah, I think I'd rather roll with Purdy. I mean, Mahomes coming off a good game. Go test the market. I mean, see what you can get at wide receiver. It's always hard to trade a QB for wide receiver, get good value though, unless you're in a super flex league. Ferg or Henry? I think I'd go. The matchup is with Fergie. Eagles 15th against the position, where the Bears are third, but I think I would anticipate better volume for Henry. I think I go Ferguson, but it's close. Marty had Dak and Carr. Sorry, guys. Already have Otten. Is trading Jason and Taysom for Burrow and Chase Brown? I would do that trade. I mean, it depends on the wide receiver room, but I do really like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't know that we're going to see this ceiling on the season again, though. Plus, DK will be back probably after the bye, is what I would be expecting. It depends on the team, but yeah, like if you're losing Hill, but you have Otten, that's fine. You're getting Burrow in. I mean, this is the value lies with Burrow and Chase Brown. This consistency for JSN is not going to be there. I think I would. The better part of this trade is the Chase Brown and Burrow side. I mean, what Burrow's the QB4, QB5. So, yeah. No worries, Sydney. If you need anything else, let us know. Did your daddy? Should I trade Gibbs and Smitty for Henry, Waddle, and Deontay? My team would be Hurts, Bijan, Henry, Nico, JJ, Ingram, and Waddle. Oh, man. I mean, that's, of course, a trade you have to consider because you're going to get the RB1. But at the same time, Gibbs is RB4. I was going to say RB5. And then you lose Smitty. So right now your team is Hurts, Bijan, Gibbs, Nico, JJ, Ingram, and Smitty. I just hold. I mean, very rarely do I say don't trade for Derrick Henry or don't trade for the RB1. But yeah, I think I would just hold. I think I would just hold. You're welcome, Carson. No worries. GT Sport, JMO, Johnston, Ridley, Jennings, or Addison? I think I would go JMO and Addison. JMO gets the Texans, 28th against the position. Addison, on the other hand, gets the Jaguars, 29th against the position. So I'm going to go with matchup there. Seeing a second wide receiver is Cooper, thinking that I need someone much stronger on the wide receiver apart from Smith. Yeah, I mean, if you're able to trade there, I mean, Cooper will be better. I mean, if I have other options, then I'm staying away from Coop this week, but Cooper will be better. This is part of the Amari Cooper experience. But yeah, it depends on what moves he can make. Tingley got Kyler. Drop one of these guys to pick up Stafford for matchups. Jalen Coker, Pop Douglas, Tolbert, Juju. It's a 3 wide receiver league. Got Wilson, Debo, and J-Mo. I mean, you could drop any of those players. I still think the guy that I would drop is Jalen Coker. I think you have the best chance of getting Coker back off of the waiver wire. Plus, he has a bye week in week 11, then a bad matchup. So I think I'd drop Coker. Is there any hope for Jalen Coker? I was hearing he could play the slot, and his next 3 opponents rank very low versus the slot. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, sure, there's still hope, but I wasn't really like one of these like crazy high on Jalen Coker people. There's hope, but yeah, he had a garbage time touchdown against Denver, found a way to get 68 receiving yards against Chicago. I mean, there's hope, but when are you really going to say, I'm going to fire up Jalen Coker in my starting lineup this week, you know? In my league, nobody wants to trade. Do you think I'm good at running back if I have A-Chain, White, and Bigsby? Well, it could be better, but it could be worse. But A-Chain's looking good. I'm in a league. Let me tell you, I'm in a league where I'm rolling with A-Chain and Rashad White. And I have been like all season long. Okay. So that team's not doing the best. The team also has had a plethora of injuries. But I've been a top 3 highest scorer in the last 2 weeks. So Jeremy, drop Mason. So which 3 running backs to start? CMC, Kyron, Dobbins, Tracy, B-Rob. I'd start Kyron. I'd start Tracy. And then you just got to decide, do you want to go Dobbins and take the floor, or do you want to take the risk with CMC? I would probably personally just start Dobbins. Tennessee's run defense has not been good. So the floor is with Dobbins. The upside lies with C-Mac. Cole Otto, thank you for the super chat. We got, you're trading Wilson and McBride for Amon-Ra, Ingram, and Dell. Now, this is a very close trade, and it depends on the roster. Depends on the roster. Do you need the added wide receiver depth? I still would rather have McBride than Ingram, but Ingram is still certainly serviceable here. So I think, you know, I'm very high on Garrett Wilson, and I have been very high on Garrett Wilson throughout the entirety of the season, not just in the past 2 weeks. Begged you guys to buy him low after week 7 and after week 4. But I still think Wilson for Amon-Ra is a fair swap. So then you're looking at McBride for Ingram and Dell. Do you need the additional wide receiver? Because if you don't really need the wide receiver depth, then there's no reason to do this trade. Because if you don't do the trade, you keep Wilson and McBride. You have a better tight end than Ingram. And you still have Wilson over Amon-Ra, which is still very close. At the end of the season, either of these guys could be in front of each other. But Wilson has been better on the season. So if you don't need the depth, I don't do the trade. If you're like hurting, then sure, that's fine. Thank you for the super chat, though. Let me know if you need any further breakdown there. Barbara, thank you for the fantasy questions and for the support. Jeremy, Love is on bye, so I can pick between Darnold and Russ. Darnold, for sure. Should I drop Butker to pick up Aubrey, Boswell, Moody, or the Boss Man? Where does Butker rank? Kicker 15. That's what I thought. Like, he's solid, but he's never good in fantasy. I don't want to say never good, but I mean, he's not like historically. Last year he was really good, but historically they score a lot of points. I guess 2019, 2018 he was good, but Saw a lot of seasons where he's not that great in fantasy because the Chiefs score too many points. Aubrey, on the other hand, I feel like is who you should pick up. I guess the ceiling's lowering for Aubrey, but I feel like the upside is the highest with Brandon Aubrey. So if he's there, I'm taking him. I go Aubrey, Boswell, and if you're not going to get one of those two, I don't think you need to drop anyone. Moody's interesting, but I go after Aubrey. And if not, I get Boswell. GT Sport, pick one. JMO, Addison, White. You know, if I have better players and better matchups, I'm probably not going for Rachaad White this week. You know, I made a strong argument for him last week, and he was fine. He had 12.5 fantasy points, but super low volume on the ground and through the air. Bucky, I mean, still really low volume, 7 touches, 3 targets. So I'd probably go Addison for a floor, JMO for upside, but they both have good matchups. Sydney, let's say I get either JMO or Jennings. My other wide receivers are Puka, Sutton, Ridley. Who would you swap out? I really don't like either Sutton or Ridley's matchups. Yeah, it's certainly not as good of a matchup this week for Cortland Sutton. Kansas City still playing great against opposing wide receivers. And then Ridley, on the other hand, obviously a bad matchup as well against the Chargers. So, I mean, between those two teams, we've got the Chiefs giving up the 9th fewest points to wide receivers and the Chargers giving up the 8th fewest. So you could really go either direction here. I personally like Sutton more on the season as a whole. And the Chiefs defense did look a little wishy-washy yesterday night, but they also weren't really defending any wide receivers for the most part. So it's kind of hard to say. I think I would rather sit Ridley, but you could easily make the argument for either player here. Tommy, I don't have Leg in my home league. Dropped him for Coker. I know. I saw that you did that. And I was like, I don't agree with that. I'm going to try and get Leggett back. If not, I'm going to flex Coker. Have a reason to watch the 6:30 game. There you go. Is Mike Williams worth a pickup? No. I mean, he's just not. He's still the wide receiver 4 on that team, in my opinion. We've seen Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson get more involved as of late. I mean, he can carve out a role, but my answer is just no. I don't have any interest in Mike Williams. Rank these 3 quarterbacks. What's up, GT Sport? Mahomes to a birdie. I got Purdy number 1. The Bucks giving up the 31st most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Give me Purdy. Denver giving up the 6th fewest for Mahomes. The Rams giving up the 20th. I probably go Purdy to a Mahomes. But if I got to start one, I'm starting Purdy. Marty Marr, you're welcome. Already got BTJ, Mooney, and Higgins for wide receivers, so trading JSN won't hurt me. I'll miss the transformer. Swiss Army knife. Oh, gosh, Kyle. I didn't care about the rain. I'm glad you benched Jordan Love. To be fair, I think it was really the injury that impacted more than anything. But the rain certainly wasn't good. But I don't know why I chose Flacco here because he's coming off such a bad game. But week 5 against Jacksonville, I said the same exact thing. And Flacco had 26 points. Josh Downs had 15 points. Michael Pittman had 14 points. Alec Pierce had 22 points. T-Law had 22 points. Bigsby had 25 points. B-Tom had 23. So I don't think Evan Ingram wasn't back, but I think Christian Kirk had a big game that game too. So uh yeah, I mean it's fair. I'll take it. Um I'll take it. And the raid was much worse in this game. Um but it's also interesting um like the Bucks Chiefs game, like the rain didn't impact things too poorly and it really started to come down. Um what was it? That Cardinals game, it was literally like there was hail. Like they could have closed the dome and they just didn't. But yeah, it's a bad call. I mean, I make bad calls. You guys know that. You guys know I'll be the first to say I make bad calls. Make plenty of good calls, but I'm not gonna get everything right. But trust me, dude. I started Jordan Love in 2 leagues. I think I only have him in 2 leagues. And I mean, one of them's a super flex league, and there's no quarterbacks available, so I just said screw it. Um and Oh, I benched him. Okay, I benched him for Jaden Daniels. That makes sense. I have 1 league where I have Jaden Daniels and Jordan Love. So, okay, I think I have him in a 3rd league that I started him in then. But yeah, trust me, as soon as that game started rolling, I was like, oh crap. Yeah, I have him in the Catch Fam League number 1, and I had a big matchup against Chase, which took me from the number 1 team to the number 3 team, Chase to the number 2 team, Steve in the number 1 team. So yeah, trust me. That's my bad. Thank God I played Dobbs and not McMillan. Yeah. McMillan didn't even freaking play. What was that about? Because I think I remember too. I think I said take the volume with McMillan. Yeah, I mean, I'm not starting any Bucks wide receivers. I was so what was that Saturday stream? I don't care about no rain. Yeah, it happens, Broski. Tommy, posted a best ball tip to general chat. Joined a free league on Sleeper. Nice. I haven't looked at any. We looked at my underdog teams the other week. Tommy, by the way, I saw your DM. I never answered. If any player throws a touchdown, you get points for it. So, like Cortland Sutton throws a touchdown, you get points for it. Taysom Hill throws a touchdown, you get points for it. David Montgomery throws a touchdown, you get points for it. Just like if Bo Nix catches a touchdown, you get points for it. What can I do? Hold on. I might as well just leave it off the screen the way that Discord wants to display this. But you got Baker, Hall, Kyron, Draco, Evans, Dell. Is this the team I remember you drafting this team. I mean, the team's fine. It's kind of hard to. I mean, Michael Wilson, you got some bad players on this team. Mooney, Hill. I mean, really, your team is Baker, Hall, Kyron, Drake, Dell, Mooney, Hill. AFM? Until Evans is back. I mean, the team's fine. That's Tyreek Hill. You've won 5 straight. That's probably pretty good, but it's not like you can change it. That one guy, thank you for the super chat. I got AJ Brown and Higgins. Higgins out for sure. Is he? I mean, he has not practiced, but he's not out for sure. Guess it's not trending in a good direction. I got AJ Brown and Higgins. I got Leggett on the bench. Should I try to get Jennings, Pearsall, or Slayton? I try to get Jennings. Try to get Jennings. Yeah. I mean, I think Leggett is startable this week. And there's a chance that Higgins plays. We'll have to see, but there's also a strong chance He doesn't. Their bye week's week 12. It's close. We'll see. But yeah, thank you for the super chat. I would go Jennings. I mean, Slayton's banged up too, right? Wow, the Steelers tried to trade for him. Looks like he should be good to go this week. So I think Jennings gives you the most upside, though. Frizz, Jennings on my waiver. Should I drop Douglas or Leggett for Jennings? Don't drop Leggett. You could drop Pop, but I think Pop will also have some of these games similar to this last week where he's like, fine. I mean, it's a bad matchup this week, a bad matchup week 12, good matchups in between. Got some more involvement out of Bourne. There's other names like you get more upside with Jennings, but I don't want to drop Leggett if I have him. JVL, what's up? Would you trade Tillman, Connor, and Cup for Mixon, B. Tom, and Fergie? Tillman's on my bench. You got Mark Andrews. Yeah, I would do this trade. You're not starting Tillman. I mean, I like Cup a lot, but I think B. Tom is fair comp. I mean, the name that stands out is B. Tom or is Mixon. I mean, I feel like if Brian Thomas wasn't coming off a bad game, like this, you'd be feeling very different. But he's still the wide receiver 6. 2 good matchups here, a bye week, another good matchup. Kind of a tough stretch to end the season, though. I mean, I don't think like you need Ferguson. Like I think Andrews is fine enough. I still like Cup. I think Connor's good. I think Tillman is fine too. But Mixon and B Tom, like, I mean, if we were in this like week 7, B Tom had 22 points. Mixon had at least 20 points, 26 points. Like, yeah, you'd be doing this in a heartbeat. But Connor and Cup still offer nice consistency, excuse me. I'd probably do it. Jonathan, what wide receiver should I pick up? It just depends on who's out there. Yeah, it's just hard to say. And it wasn't really a great week for the waiver wire in general. So it just purely depends. But Xavier Leggett, Quentin Johnston, Demarcus Robinson, Jalen Tolbert, probably your most likely candidates, unless Jameson Williams, Jawan Jennings, Judy, Sutton, Shakir, Coleman, Jason, or Tillman are out there. So that was the waiver wire list this past week. Yeah, if you won 5 straight, that is a good thing, Tommy. All right, guys, I'm going to have to wrap it up in the next couple minutes here. So if you guys need anything, get it in quickly, and we'll start wrapping up the stream. Got started a little bit later than I wanted to tonight, so I apologize, guys, but usually got to get off by 10. Got to edit an entire video for tomorrow. So if you guys need anything last minute, get in here. Of course, as always, if you guys need anything, you can drop a comment on any of the YouTube videos that have come out on the week or as they come out, and I will get every comment throughout the week answered as well. And let's see. Charlie, rest of the season, Myers or Cooper? I'm going to take the floor with Myers. I'm sorry. Myers has been good. He's going to get the volume. I know Bowers is there, but this is the only wide receiver on this team now. He's got a bad schedule right out the bye. Miami, Denver, Kansas City is bad, but then it gets good. Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Jacksonville, New Orleans. So he's probably going to be a nice buy low candidate, but just bear in mind that it's a bad schedule right out the gate for 3 straight games. But he's also produced in bad games. He produced against Denver in week 5 and Kansas City in week 8. So honestly, I think I'd rather have him because the consistency is there, but Cooper's the upside play if you want it. Play Kamara. Boom. I mean, Kamara's that guy. Matt, someone offered me Adams and Hunt for Bijan. Nah, I would keep Bijan. I keep Bijan. It's an okay offer, but also like, I mean, they're selling Adams high, which is smart, coming off of 22 points. And then when it comes to Hunt, what did he finish with? 18 points. I mean, he's been consistent ever since he got the lead back role. So, yeah, I keep Bijan. I keep Bijan. What's he? The RB6? Yep, RB6. Yeah, I mean, come on. He's getting super involved in the passing game. I'm rolling with Bijan until the end of the season. All right, guys. So make sure you all hit the like button on the way out. Start sits at wide receivers for the week is out. Start sits for running backs is out. Must start defense is out. Waiver wire ads for the week is out as well. So make sure you guys check out the videos. Drop me a comment. If you have any further questions, drop a comment. Start sits at quarterbacks and tight ends will drop first thing in the morning. So make sure you guys check that out as well. You can drop a comment. Then Pete's kicker rankings will come out. And then we'll roll into our end of the week schedule. So must start players, buy low options. I might do the trade video a little bit different this week. Might like involve players to trade for the fantasy playoffs. Then we'll do sneaky starts, last minute waivers, and then 10 things you need to know. Sunday morning, we'll roll right into week 11 after that. So thank you guys so much for the fantasy questions tonight. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Tommy, I appreciate you, bro. Thank you for the questions. Mike, would you pick up Niners defense over Quentin Johnston? No, unless your defense sucks. I mean, they're one of these teams that can get you 12 or 26 points or 3 points or 8, like they're 8 points. Like they're just so back and forth. I prefer to get the skill position player in Quentin Johnston if possible. You know, you have to be really hurting that defense. So I prefer to get Quentin Johnston. All right, guys. That'll do it for the night. The Chiefs defense. Probably more upside with the Niners. The floor is similar. So I would drop the Chiefs for the Niners. Once again, we talked about this for weeks and we talked about it tonight, but the Chiefs defense are not a good fantasy defense. Great real life defense. Didn't have their best game this past week, but they're not a good, like you can play them against Carolina, Cleveland, maybe Denver. They don't really have a great end of the season schedule. So you want to drop the Chiefs for the Niners, that's fine, but go get Quentin Johnston. All right, guys, thanks for everything. Thanks for all the fantasy questions. I will talk to you guys soon. Make sure you guys are checking out the content as the week goes on. That'll do it for tonight. So with that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch. And peace.